picture this scenario for a second. You just got home from the grocery store.
Right.
And you are feeling incredibly accomplished. I mean, you've been tracking your calories, you've been exercising, and you've carefully selected this beautiful spread of foods that seem, naturally, flawlessly healthy.
Like the perfect meal prep.
Yeah, exactly. We're talking fresh vegetables, maybe some high-quality cooking oils, some lean meats or smoked fish. You are doing everything right by the book.
Or so you think.
Right. Because lurking inside that perfectly curated, highly nutritious meal, there might be, chemical concerns sitting right there on your plate.
It's definitely a disconcerting reality of the modern food system.
Yeah, we are talking about contaminants that you can't see. You certainly can't taste them. And you definitely won't find them listed anywhere on the nutrition label.
No, you won't. And I think we are deeply conditioned to think about our food purely in terms of its macronutrient profile, the proteins, the carbs, the fats.
Yeah, we obsess over the calories.
We do, but we rarely consider the molecular hitchhikers that join the ride during the cooking, processing, or even the harvesting stages.
Which is exactly why we are doing this deep dive. I was reading a recent piece on Science Daily that really brought this into focus. So, okay, let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
We are looking at a fascinating report. This is from May 22, 2026, about cancer-causing chemicals hiding in everyday foods.
Right.
But our mission today isn't just to ruin your appetite.
No, please keep eating.
Right? We don't want to make you paranoid about your pantry.
Yeah.
We are actually going to explore the revolutionary high-speed testing methods that scientists are now deploying to track these chemicals down before they ever reach you.
It's really incredible technology.
It is. Specifically, we're looking at the groundbreaking work of Professor Jungu Lee and his team at Seoul National University of Science and Technology.
Yeah, the work coming out of Soltech is just pivotal right now. But to fully grasp why these scientists are so focused on building better testing protocols, we first have to understand the nature of the chemical they are hunting.
Right, like what are we actually looking for?
Exactly, and the mechanics of how it actually gets into the food supply in the first place. So the primary targets here are PAHs.
PAHs?
Right, which stands for polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons.
Okay, wait. Hydrocarbons. I usually hear about hydrocarbons in the context of, like, car exhaust or fossil fuels.
Yeah, you do.
It's a bit jarring to talk about them in the context of dinner.
I know, it sounds gross. But the connection is actually very direct. From a chemical standpoint, PAHs are hydrophobic organic compounds comprising multiple fused aromatic rings.
Okay, we might need a translation out of chemistry jargon for that one.
Fair enough. So hydrophobic just means they repel water.
Right, like oil and water.
Exactly.
No.
And because they hate water, they have a really strong affinity for binding with fats.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And the aromatic rings part.
The fused aromatic rings part just describes their shape. They are microscopic, incredibly rigid, almost honeycomb-like structures of carbon and hydrogen atoms fused together.
Wow, okay. So how do they actually get onto my food?
They are created through incomplete combustion.
Incomplete combustion, so burning something.
Right. Anywhere organic matter is burning or heating up without enough oxygen to completely incinerate it, PAHs are born.
Which brings a very popular summer activity right into the crosshairs, doesn't it?
It really does.
Because the National Cancer Institute data points directly at the backyard grill for this kind of chemical creation.
Oh, absolutely.
See, I always assumed the danger of grilling was just, burning the meat itself, like the char on the outside.
A lot of people think that.
But the actual mechanism is much more insidious.
Yeah.
When you put a piece of meat on a hot grill, the fat and the juices inevitably heat up and drip down onto the heat source.
Right, and the moment those fat droplets hit the open flame, or even just the searing hot metal, they undergo a rapid thermal breakdown.
It just vaporizes.
Yeah, the high heat literally alters the molecular structure of the fat. It instantly creates these polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons, which vaporize into the smoke.
It's essentially a toxic boomerang effect.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, you put the food on the grill thinking, great, I'm cooking off the excess fat. It's dripping away harmlessly.
Right.
But the intense heat is actually transforming that fat into a chemical smoke and bringing those unwanted party crashers right back up to coat the surface of your meal.
What's fascinating here is the massive gap in the health context surrounding this process.
How so?
Well, we absolutely know these compounds are hazardous. I mean, PAHs are heavily present in cigarette smoke.
Yikes.
Yeah, and they are in the smog hanging over cities. And the National Cancer Institute notes that in controlled animal studies, exposing subjects to PAHs and related high-temperature cooking compounds it has definitively caused cancer.
Wow.
The biological mechanism for cellular damage is really well documented.
But I sense a gap between the animal data and the human reality, though.
You'd be right.
Because if we know what causes cancer in animals, I'm guessing it's exponentially harder to prove that, say, eating a burger every weekend causes cancer in humans,
Exact.
considering we don't live in controlled lab environments.
That is the exact problem epidemiologists face. Human population studies haven't established a definitive, undeniable link specifically between exposure from cooked meats and cancer rates.
Because there are just too many variables.
Way too many. Human diets are incredibly chaotic. We eat a staggering variety of things. We move through different polluted environments.
Right.
And keeping a precise ledger of exactly how much PAH a person consumes over a lifetime is, well, it's functionally impossible. We have been flying blind.
Yeah, we can't definitively link the food to the health outcome if we have no accurate way of measuring the chemical on the plate.
Exactly.
But I have to assume the older testing methods were just, what, too slow or expensive to be practical for the sheer volume of food we consume?
Oh, they're a nightmare.
Because if these chemicals are floating around in barbecue smoke and car exhaust, we should be tracking them constantly.
We tried, but finding them in a food sample was a massive toxic headache.
Really?
Yeah. Imagine trying to find a single grain of black sand on a beach at midnight, and you're only allowed to use a pair of tweezers.
That sounds awful.
The old conventional extraction methods were grueling. Scientists relied on solid phase extraction, liquid extraction, and accelerated solvent extraction.
Let's break those down a bit. What does something like liquid extraction actually involve in a lab setting?
Okay, so in liquid extraction, a technician takes the pulverized food sample.
Like a mashed up burger.
Basically, yeah. And they mix it with massive volumes of chemical solvents. They shake it up, hoping the PAH will migrate out of the food and into the solvent based on their chemical affinities.
Oh, much like how oil and water separate in a salad dressing.
That is exactly it.
Right.
And then they have to physically siphon off the solvent layer.
And doing that for thousands of food samples sounds like an absolute nightmare.
It is.
Not to mention the irony here. Wait, so to test our food for harmful chemicals, scientists were forced to use vast amounts of entirely different harmful, hazardous solvents.
It's completely counterintuitive, isn't it?
It sounds incredibly counterproductive. It's like trying to clean a delicate silk shirt by scrubbing it with a harsh wire brush.
Oh, wow. Yes.
Sure, you might scrape the stain out eventually, but you are creating a massive new mess. You're destroying the fabric, and you're exposing the person holding the brush to a bunch of toxic dust.
That wire brush analogy captures the frustration of the scientific community perfectly. The old methods required hours, sometimes days of preparation time per sample.
Just to find the pHs.
Yeah, and they required heavy, repetitive manual labor from technicians, exposing them to harsh solvent fumes. And they generated an enormous amount of toxic chemical waste that then had to be disposed of.
That is wild.
The industry desperately needed a scalpel instead of a wire brush.
Enter the solution.
Exactly. A streamlined, revolutionary method known as QueChERS.
Spelled QuECHERS.
Right.
And I love this because the acronym spells out exactly what it delivers. Quick, easy, cheap, effective, rugged, and safe.
It's a great name.
It almost sounds like a late-night infomercial pitch.
Yeah.
But the actual mechanics of it are brilliant.
It is an elegant piece of chemistry. Instead of massive vats of liquid solvents, QueChERS works through a highly targeted microextraction.
Okay.
You take a small sample of the food, add a specific solvent and some specialized extraction salts, and you shake it violently for a minute or two.
Just a minute or two. That is fast.
Very fast. Then you put it in a centrifuge. The extreme spinning force, combined with the salts, forces the water and the organic solvent to separate into distinct layers almost instantly.
And that pulls the chemicals out.
Yes, it drives the chemical contaminants out of the food matrix and into the solvent layer where they can be easily collected.
Okay, so scientists suddenly have this quick, easy, cheap, and safe tool. What happens when they aim this upgraded analytical spotlight onto the actual food sitting in our pantries?
The results are pretty surprising.
Yeah, the results from Professor Jungu Lee's study at Soltech, which was published in the journal Food Science and Biotechnology, are completely counterintuitive.
They really are. To test the boundaries of the QueChERS method, Professor Lee's team used a highly efficient solvent called acetonitrile.
Acetonitrile. Okay.
They used it to extract 8 specific high-priority PAH from a wide variety of food samples. Acetonitrile is fantastic for this because it readily mixes with water, but it separates beautifully when you add those extraction salts.
And they were specifically hunting for heavy hitters like benzoaperine and chrysine,
Right.
which, from what I read, are some of the most toxic and closely monitored PAHs globally.
Correct. But extracting them isn't enough, you know? You have to purify the sample so you can actually read it.
Why is that?
Because the food matrix, the proteins, the sugars, the complex fats, it creates a lot of analytical noise.
It clutters up the reading.
Exactly. So to silence that noise, the researchers tested purification strategies using different combinations of sorbents.
Sorbents, what are those?
They're basically microscopic chemical sponges. They're designed to grab onto the interfering fats and pigments, pulling them out of the liquid while leaving the PAH behind for measurement.
And the data showing how well this worked is staggering. I want to ground this for you listening. They achieved calibration curves with R-squared values above 0.99.
Which makes this system statistically rock solid.
Right. But it's the limits of detection that blew my mind. They could confidently detect these PAHs at levels ranging from 0.0006 to 0.035 micrograms per kilogram.
Yeah, the precision is hard to even wrap your head around.
Right. To put that microscopic scale into perspective, that is roughly equivalent to a scientist being able to detect a single drop of a chemical perfectly dissolved into an Olympic-sized swimming pool.
That's a great visual.
It is a level of precision that leaves no place for these contaminants to hide.
Furthermore, their recovery rates, meaning the percentage of the chemical they successfully pulled out of the sample without losing any in the process, were up to 109.6% at certain concentrations.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Armed with a tool this unbelievably precise, they started testing everyday items. And the highest pH levels they found did not come from a charred piece of barbecue.
Nope.
The highest levels were found in soybean oil.
Yep.
That was followed by duck meat, and then canola oil. Soybean oil and canola oil.
I know, it sounds crazy.
These are staple ingredients sitting in completely unburned room temperature bottles in almost every kitchen in the world.
And this raises an important question for consumers. How are combustion chemicals getting into cooking oils?
Right. Nobody is grilling a bottle of oil.
Exactly. The answer lies in the molecular structure we discussed earlier. PAHs are hydrophobic, they despise water, but they love fat.
And cooking oils are essentially pure concentrated fat.
They are absolute magnets for these compounds.
Which means the contamination is happening long before the consumer ever turns on their stove.
Exactly. We have to look at the entire agricultural life cycle. Yeah, the soybeans or canola seeds, they can absorb PA just directly from the environment. Think about agricultural diesel equipment spraying exhaust fumes over the fields.
Or just industrial pollution settling on the crops.
Exactly. And beyond that, the industrial processing required to extract oil from seeds involves intense heating, roasting, and mechanical pressing.
So it's getting cooked in the factory.
Right. If those processing environments aren't perfectly controlled, PAHs are generated and immediately locked right into the oil.
That makes so much sense.
And this demonstrates why having a testing method that works seamlessly across complex food matrices, from a solid piece of duck meat to a viscous bottle of soybean oil, is so vital.
It totally shifts how we view food safety. I mean, we are so hyper-focused on the end user standing at the grill trying not to burn the dinner.
Right.
We completely ignore the hidden chemical history of the ingredient itself. And this realization has sparked a global expansion, right?
It really has.
Because the Soltec study proved this method works brilliantly on pure fats and meats. But the real test is applying it to the outer edges of the grocery store, to highly processed or complex traditional foods.
That is where the research gets even more compelling. We can look at a 2025 study published in the journal Foods.
Okay, what did they do?
Researchers took a modified version of the QueChERS method and applied it to a massive sample size of 302 different retail foods.
That's a lot of food.
And because they were dealing with incredibly complex items, they added a freeze-out step.
Oh, I love the mechanics of this.
Oh, yeah.
From what I understand, they literally drop the temperature of the sample to sub-zero levels.
They do.
Because fats solidify at low temperatures while the solvent remains liquid, the heavy interfering fats literally crash out of the solution. It makes it much easier to isolate the PAH.
It is a brilliant way to bypass the chemical complexity. Using this method, they found the highest concentration of the 4 priority PAH in something called kizurubushi.
Keizabushi.
Yeah, it is a traditional Japanese food made of skipjack tuna that undergoes a rigorous process of being smoked, fermented, and dried before being shaved into thin flakes.
Ah, okay. The traditional smoking process essentially bathes the fish in the exact conditions that manufacture PAHs.
Exactly.
But that same study also threw a red flag on something completely different. Grilled chicken feet.
Oh, yes.
And they determined this using the European Food Safety Authority's margin of exposure approach. Let's dig into that because it dictates how governments actually respond to these numbers.
The margin of exposure is a critical risk assessment tool used by regulatory bodies. It isn't a direct measure of toxicity, though.
It's more of a ratio. Huh?
Exactly, it's a ratio. It compares the dose of a substance that causes a small but measurable adverse effect in an animal population against the estimated amount of that substance a human would typically consume.
Okay, so balancing the risk.
Right. If the margin of exposure ratio drops below a certain threshold, meaning human consumption is getting uncomfortably close to the dose that causes biological damage, regulators sound the alarm.
And the chicken feet triggered it.
Yeah. When a food item triggers that warning, it forces the industry to reevaluate how that specific item is being processed and monitored.
And the scrutiny isn't limited to meat and fish either. Let's wander over to the cereal aisle for a second.
Oh, right.
Another 2025 study focused on the Romanian market, testing 96 different cereals and 18 derived cereal products. They had to modify the QueChERS method again because grains present a totally different chemical matrix than fats or meats.
Yeah, for the cereals, researchers utilized a ZSEP plus cleanup process.
ZSEP plus.
Right. It utilizes a zirconium-based sorbent that is exceptionally good at pulling out complex lipids and pigments found in grains.
Okay, so they clean it up with the zirconium.
Exactly. Once they purified the samples, they ran them through gas chromatography and tandem mass spectrometry.
Now, those machines are the heavy artillery of the analytical chemistry world.
Oh, they are massive.
You are basically taking the purified liquid sample, flashing it into a vapor, and pushing it through a long microscopic column.
Right.
The different molecules race down the tube at different speeds, separating them perfectly. Then the mass spectrometer smashes those molecules apart and reads their unique atomic fingerprints.
That is exactly how they function. And using that immense analytical power, they quantified crysine, which is a highly monitored PAH in 17% of the raw cereal samples.
Yep, 17%.
Yeah. While it is a relief that they found no PAHs in the further process-derived products, finding a known carcinogen in nearly a fifth of the base cereals is a striking data point.
It really is. It highlights for you, the listener, how much the safety profile of your breakfast fluctuates based on variables entirely out of your control.
Entirely.
We're talking about the ambient environmental exposure of a wheat field to nearby highways, or the microscopic chemical changes caused by industrial grain drying machines. It all compounds, even for a seemingly innocent bowl of morning cereal.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look at how this testing revolution fundamentally alters the architecture of the global food supply chain.
Right.
Because we've established how pervasive these compounds can be. But until now, the testing bottleneck meant regulatory bodies and food companies had to rely heavily on broad assumptions, historical data, and, infrequent spot checks.
Because the tests were simply too slow and too expensive to run on every single batch.
Exactly.
But QueChERS flips the script entirely. I mean, it makes high-speed, highly accurate testing economically practical for food companies to implement before a product ever gets loaded onto a delivery truck bound for your local grocery store.
It changes everything.
It cuts down the analysis time from days to hours or even minutes. It slashes the operational costs. And, critically, it vastly improves the daily working conditions for the laboratory scientists who no longer have to inhale hard chemical fumes.
This multi-layered benefit ties directly into the underlying philosophy of Professor Jun Guli's work.
Yeah, let's talk about his background.
He isn't just an academic running experiments in a vacuum. His background is deeply rooted in global food policy. He served as a scientific officer at Korea's Ministry of Food and Drug Safety.
Wow.
He was a visiting researcher at the regulatory body FSNZ, and he serves as an expert for the FAO Jimo Rate Expert Committee on Food Additives.
So he's the guy writing the rulebook that protects public health on an international scale.
Pretty much, yeah.
And his ultimate conclusion about this QueChERS research is profound.
Yeah.
He noted that advancing these methods isn't solely about ensuring the public gets safe food.
Right.
It is equally about reducing the use and the emission of hazardous chemicals within the laboratories themselves.
It is the embodiment of green chemistry. For decades, the scientific community operated under a dark irony, you know?
That we were generating vast amounts of toxic environmental waste in our laboratories just to prove our food wasn't toxic.
Exactly. By optimizing extraction methods, we are finally breaking that cycle.
So what does this all mean? It means the landscape of food safety is shifting from reactive to deeply proactive, and it's doing so in a way that creates a true win-win.
It really is.
The testing is exponentially faster, it is astonishingly precise, and it is significantly cleaner. We are building a system that actively protects your cellular health as a consumer, while simultaneously protecting the environment from industrial laboratory waste.
It is a rare moment where technological advancement aligns perfectly with both public health and environmental stewardship.
It is. All right, let's do a quick recap of the journey we've been on today.
Sounds good.
We started at the backyard grill, breaking down the mechanics of how fat drips, combusts, and creates a toxic boomerang of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons that coat our food.
We then explored the historical bottlenecks that kept us from accurately tracking these chemicals. The slow, grueling, solvent-heavy extraction methods that function like a wire brush on delicate fabric.
Right. Then we introduced the game-changing elegance of the QueChERS method. Quick, easy, cheap, effective, rugged, and safe.
Yep.
We walked through Professor Lee's data out of Soltech, revealing the microscopic precision of the test. And we unpacked the highly counterintuitive discoveries of PAHs hiding in everyday pantry staples, from unburned soybean oil to smoked kizurabushi flakes, and even European breakfast cereals.
We have mapped out how processing, environmental exposure, and even the simple act of drying grains can fundamentally alter the molecular makeup of our diet.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to mull over. As we see these testing methods become faster, cheaper, and increasingly miniaturized, it forces us to look forward. We've seen technology shrink massive computing power into smartphones.
We have, and it is entirely plausible that the analytical power currently housed in massive gas chromatography machines could eventually be condensed.
Right now, we rely on international regulatory bodies to intercept these molecular hitchhikers.
Right.
But if the QueChERS methodology proves that complex chemistry can be made quick, easy, and cheap, will we eventually see a day where the bottleneck is pushed all the way to the consumer?
Oh, that's an interesting thought.
Imagine a near future where your smart fridge or a simple optical scanner attached to your smartphone can instantly read the hidden chemical history of your groceries right on your kitchen counter.
Wow.
If you had the power to instantly see every microscopic contaminant your food absorbed during its journey to your plate, would you still want to look?
That is the big question.
It is. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Stay curious, keep asking questions about the hidden life cycle of your ingredients, and maybe take a second look at how you're managing the heat on your next backyard cookout.